You said where do you fit in?
Yeah, because I wonder, as someone who is biologically white,
Mm-hmm.
but deeply immersed in African American culture
Mm-hmm.
and identity,
Mm-hmm.
is is it only natural for me to be collecting this kind of work and engaging in these dialogues, or is it actually appropriation?
Mm.
And that, of course, plays into what museums and collectors do, which is appropriate, especially tribal
Yes.
works. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
believe it or not, I do, when I wake up at night, I'm thinking about these things.
I think you have a valid and um, humanistic um, passion for the question that you pose because you asked the question that you posed was where do I fit in, and you fit like literally right there. It's kind of like what I'm thinking about as I was hearing you talk. You know how like when the term black owned businesses or black artists or Black History Month, I say to myself, why does it have to be the word black in front of it? And who came up with it? So it's kind of like it's an underlying lying still segregation on our history because when it comes to when I think about like the perpetrator and the perpetrator needed a victim and the victim needed the perpetrator to actually make history. Now, I'm not saying I agree with what has happened, but what I'm saying is there's a cause and effect, right? And there's two parts, and those two parts were needed to, let's just say, evolve our American history. And within that isn't right. It is injustice. It's painful. It's traumatizing. It's all of these emotions that us as humans we don't want to actually talk about, but they're real. And the fact that you and I are two aware human beings with different backgrounds, you know, where you fit in as a white man, well, you fit right there, right along with us, because it's always been this segregation or this divide. And I think a lot of times people don't, we're just so used to and accustomed with it being said over and over and over and over of black owned, black this, that there's a, why is there need to be such a huge emphasis on like black? Why isn't the way of reclaiming our history as an American, why isn't it togetherness? You know, why does it still have to be segregated? Because there are people like yourself who have that deep passion to understand your history, our history, and have those dialogues. Because your dialogue and your questions and your understanding from it is for you to become more connected with the human. I won't even say race because that's a construct, but with humanity. And we need more people like you. And that's why you fit in. And that's why you collect. And that's why everybody can have a part in the advocacy. The museums are institutions that house these paintings and these sculptures and these works. But at the end of the day, we can all advocate for humanity. We just have different ways of doing it. And so, in the context of what we're talking about now with art, I've posed these questions just like I posed in the beginning, like why is the word black in front of black? Well, why is the word black in front of own like businesses or um, history month or and etc. So it's like I sit and I question just like you, and because I do that, my way of being an advocate is I make the work. Your way of advocacy is collecting the work. And when the two come together, just like what I mentioned before, cause and effect, perpetrator, victim, you make history. How is it that like we are claiming to be a culture of that advocates for humanity, but we're so divided? It's just like what James Baldwin said. Like high noon on Sundays is the most segregated time because they're like all of these churches and all these different denominations, but we're at the end of the day, we're human beings, you know? And so I think for me and you and I are both striving, pushing, advocating, voicing our opinions on how to come together collectively. But we just have different ways of doing it. So that's why you fit in, and that's why you're needed. And I hope that um, more individuals like yourself and more institutions really recognize the importance of making um, making it the normal of instead of it being um, you know African American art or contemporary, like African American art or that is not segregated because I still see that in museums, and I also still see museums jumping on the bandwagon of a trend, you know. I still see that too. So I still see, there's a game being played, just like um, Barkley Hendricks, and he's mentioned in some of his commentary, like it's a game. It's just a game, and he's played it very well in regards to knowing the art world. And it's just like Kerry James Marshall, another person. He's like it is a game, and you have to know how the game works to get into the game and then navigate your way throughout the game. But you first got to know the rules. And if these institutions are highlighting the artists from European culture that are labeled as masters, right? Then the way for us as creators, um, collectors, can be a part of the canon is to actually do something with the medium that we have at our disposal. For you, it's collecting art. For me, it's making the art. So we're actually inserting ourselves in the canon. Same mission, different medium, right? So hopefully that over time, these conversations over time can be more and more and more for the everyday people, the everyday person to have as a norm. That it's not just black art. It's not just, it's our history. It's not just black history. Like, you know what I mean? It's all of us together. Um, so those questions help me to make work.
When we first started talking about this project, then you said you wanted to talk about entrepreneurship for artists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that seems connected to me in terms of what you were saying, Kerry James Marshall and
Mm-hmm.
Barclay Hendricks about knowing
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to play the game and knowing the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Um, do you want to talk a little bit if you were giving advice to, I'm sure you do, to your own students, but
Yeah.
to our students here. How, what advice would you give them about grappling with these issues?
Well, the contemporary word is hustling. Um, that's the word that's been used in, American culture, urban culture, contemporary culture. I have sometimes used it. What I will say is I've been fortunate enough to watch my grandfather, who had two farms, and how he was able to cultivate and how he was able to plant seeds, be patient, but still being progressive every single day to the end goal. And the end goal for him was to have a crop so he can sell, um, to feed his family, and to feed us. And so I had that early exposure of that, of working every day towards this one common goal. And so it really dawned on me that, like, when I was in my earlier age stage of painting, like, I had all these paintings, but I'm like, nobody knew me. And so um, I went back home and visited my folks and my grandmother as well. And I just kind of walked on the farm and just sort of like, she still had the cows. And so I would, watch the cows. And I just thought, like, all of the times that, like, when I was on summer break, winter break, and I just had to work in the fields, I did pick cotton, tobacco. I actually learned how to drive a car from driving a tractor. Um, I plowed the field, like all those things that I did in order to, help them make, to feed and make money. But that was my exposure. So from that, I said, well, if as I continue to paint, what else can I continue to do, but within the same realm of art making? And so I had to put myself out there. And I think that was the most beneficial thing for myself, is that to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what that meant was talking to people. I would literally, like, go online, like Google, like, all the networking events and just show up. I'd go to Kinko's and make my business cards, just my name on it, and an image on the back, and I would hand them out. I would go to Goodwill and get, like, a sports jacket and, some jeans and some nice dress shoes, and, like, go to these fancy restaurants and sit at the bar and drink water and just have conversations with people, about my art. I would take my portfolio of paintings and I would drive, hours to different galleries to show, my work. And from doing that, just over the years of building my confidence, because it might not have led to a painting or a commission, but what I was able to take from it was, how can I speak and engage with the person better to make them interested about what I'm passionate about? And along the way, I've crafted, I finessed it, I shaped it. And so now that I can go anywhere and talk about myself and do it very authentically and do it very sincerely. And when I did that, it helped me to become a speaker as well as a artist. And then I learned even more that if I know, like I said, with Kerry James Marshall and Hendrix, it's like, know the game. Okay, well, who are the icons, or who are the ones that are labeled icons? And just know the history. So then I was able to talk about that. And then, think about, well, what are the things that are going on in our world today? And how is that, associated with color? And so I started studying color theory. And then I started studying, like, what are the things that we look at, that we take for granted, that are specifically used, to help us decipher, like, to stop, or to green is go, or to yield at, for yellow, and all those things. So all of those things combined just help me to be able to put myself out there. And it's necessary. We have a digital age. We're in a digital age, and it's only going to get more and more. So we have to use every possible medium that we can, but do it authentically. Do it in a way that suits and fits you. But you cannot make paintings, have the paintings, in the house and expect to, be in a museum one day. I would literally make phone calls every single day to museums because I was told in grad school, don't reach out to museums, don't call them, don't show your portfolio. And I was just like, well, why not? Why not? And so I did it, and that's what I did. I literally would call them every day, and then I would document it on an Excel sheet. And so I figured out when to call, what time to call, what to say, what not to say. Because if I said I was an artist, then I automatically got hung up on, or I got to some voicemail. So I learned how to finesse my words for people to be interested enough about what I need, what I would like to work with them on, but not just come out and say artist. So it's just all those things that I think are important and that are beneficial. Yeah.
But of course, you have to be willing to put in the time to
Oh
develop
yeah.
the craft to go with the hustle, because you can't
Yeah.
just be hustling anything. You have to have something, as you told
Yeah.
me once in a email,
Mm.
about you want to make sure that your work is valued for the time you've put into it and
Oh yeah.
the talent that has gone into it.
Yeah.
It's not just free for the taking.
No, I remember that's so true. I remember I gave a lecture. I won an award, the Career Alumni Success Award from SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And my talk and speech for with the students of like thousands was like I shared with them the importance of making sure that people know why, like the need, like because people don't need art, right? Like we don't need art to survive, like food, clothes, and water, shelter, those things. But it's up to us as creators to share that need and share that passion, that drive. Um, and I talked about that importance. And so all of the advocacy and the research and the study and the time, all of that, and the mistakes and the failures just to get one painting, just to get one painting. That's why it's so important to express the need for art and the significance of it, right? The need for it as a collector, but more importantly, the significance to the artist. So, yeah, yeah.
How do you how do you feel about letting a painting go and letting it get into the hands of a collector and wondering about its fate? Because I'm thinking specifically about Kerry
Yeah,
James Marshall and a $21 million painting
yeah.
that belongs to someone who's
Hmm.
locked up right now.
Yeah, I think it depends on where the person's at. And I think as far as the artist, where they are in their lives. I think for me, in my earlier stages, I was like, I had this mind-driven mindset. Museums, museums, museums. I want to be in their collections. Um, it's just been like the last year or two to wherein I I would, and maybe it's just where I'm at in life, but the joy that I get knowing that, I put my blood, sweat, and tears in it, and I do in all my work, but that whichever piece is collected by someone for their home, they thought it was so powerful and captivating that and significant to not just buy it because that's a transaction, but just, and that can only go so far, but to see it every day, that to me is like, wow. And I think for a lot of artists, because what that is recognition. And what that is it's the artist is being affirmed spiritually every single day. So for me, when I was in the studio and I'm just like, man, I want somebody to buy some stuff, man, I don't feel like painting this right now, because my mind's somewhere else. Man, this part of the painting is not working right. I always had the people that felt that I was significant enough to collect. I always sort of even museums. I felt that was my push and my inspiration, and I felt like that was my motivation to keep doing it. And so now I've just hit a point in my life where I'm in many museums, but I've just hit a point in my life where I don't really care about being in museums that much. It's nice, but I don't care. I care more about the heart of the human and building that relationship, and that the person is enjoying seeing my works every day in their home.
No,
So
a museum. I think of a museum as a kind of cold space.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
institutional. It like the canon. It's institutional. It
yeah.
it validates your work. Obviously,
It
it
does. Yeah.
raises the value of your
Mm-hmm.
unsold to be sold pieces. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time that what you were saying about a transaction, if
Yeah.
someone is just buying it for the sake of saying, I have this piece,
Right. Right.
then it's the equivalent of buying a car. It's the
Exactly.
equivalent of buying a home.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
if you're buying it because you want to live with that painting, it's almost like a
Mm-hmm.
marriage, or very much like
Yes.
a marriage,
Well said. Well said. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I mean, my problem is I don't have space for all the work that I own and all the work
That's a good part.
that I keep acquiring, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean I don't go and unwrap it and enjoy and look at it and enjoy it. And
Mm-hmm.
the
It's
things
true.
the things that are on my wall from you, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like Watts Rioter, which
Yeah.
I still have a tormented
Mm-hmm.
relationship with, but
Mm-hmm.
I want it on the wall. I want to look at it. I want
Yeah.
people to see it.
And I imagine too that each time you stop and look at the pieces that you do have, I imagine that you see something new.
I do, because
You know?
um,
Yeah.
that's when we were talking about chokehold, and I said until it was hanging, I had never noticed the thumbprint. And we
Right.
started
Yeah.
talking about that. And
Mm-hmm.
since then, with
Mm-hmm.
my discovering Trevante
Mm-hmm.
Strawn, and I have such a difficult time with his last name because it's pronounced
Yeah.
totally unlike it's spelled. But his whole remarks about identity and visibility keep coming resonate with me, and that thumbprint and what we
Mm-hmm.
talked about. So it's always a perpetual conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that these videos, these dialogues that you're having, I like the fact that that's the advocacy and the participation and involvement, engagement that is happening. So it's like, you know, you're documenting, you're doing exactly what artists do. You're documenting the sign of the time, and you're putting your thumbprint on it, by each video and by each conversation, because it does say that, okay, I was here, and I'm engaging myself into the process. And so I just love the fact that, going back to that question from the beginning question, um, of where do I fit in? It's just like I think it was an open ended but beautiful question to start out with, and that hope that people do like take heed to that, like really actively listen to that, because that's really what we all should be doing when we look at the works. When we look at these paintings, like where do I fit in? How do I see myself in position in context of the world? You know, um, what are my views and my values and thoughts and concerns, and ideas? What do I hope to see? What's imaginable? And that's what art does. Art allows, for the human to really be able to see and surpass something, like to see and surpass something in their mind, but make it come into the present, for our reality. So,
And I like the fact you've not particularly mentioned audience.
yeah,
And I think that gets back to what you were saying about why do we have to put the word black in front of all these things, that it does imply audience in a way.
it does.
And
Because why don't we say white owned businesses?
yeah, because no
You're
no
right.
one would go there.
I'm saying, why don't we say that? Why?
But
Why is
we
it?
don't think in
You
those
know,
terms. No one would ever say Cy Twombly was one of the great white artists, or Gerhard Richter was one of the great white artists.
exactly. Which are my favorite. They're both of them are my favorite. Um, yeah, Cy Twombly and Richter. But no, you're right. And then, or like, you know, we don't have like, well, there is an Africa town, or there was an Africa town, but like, there isn't. Not that I know of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but there isn't like an Africa town, or like there's like Chinatown, like the Jewish community. Like there isn't a segregated place that I can think of in America for Africans or black, which is still sometimes I kind of like, like should I even say black, white? But you know, I kind of wrestle with that still.
Well, let's actually get into talking about some of your work up close and personal, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just going to actually pull some small pieces off the wall.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. The Boy Scouts.
And Boy Scouts is
Boy Scout.
still one that I'm
That is one of my
trying hard
favorite.
to resist, but it'll probably end up somewhere in my house or my office.
I would say it's one of my favorites for a lot of reasons. The first reason is, my grandmother would go to Piggly Wiggly every Friday with her girlfriends, and she would buy me art supplies from Piggly Wiggly. Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store in the South, just a country grocery store, and they had a section of mall art supplies. And so they had these little scratch pads where you have like the crayon underneath and the black on top, and it comes with this little plastic pencil. So I would sit beside her and watch soap operas and um, and scratch an image. And a lot of times I was trying to draw her or draw something like a toy in front of me. And so it was a tender moment that I kind of went back in my mind and thought about when it was when a lot of the protests that were going on for the police brutality killings that started up in 2016. But then I was seeing like this political shift in office of people that were wanting to run. So because of that, I just was trying to think of like what was those moments, those most personal moments wherein I could like be free and but still have to wrestle with the sign of the times. And so I remember that I hated Boy Scouts when I was little. My mom would make me go, and I was looking in several books where of the Black Panther movement in the '70s, and came across these two Boy Scouts who were standing there in DC. And I said, you know what, I want to paint this because it was such a vivid memory for me that I hated being in the Boy Scouts. I was the only black kid there. I felt out of place. No one could relate to me. Um, I got up to like bear, and then I quit. Thankfully, my mom allowed me to quit, but it was just odd and challenging for me to be in that environment because I felt alone all the time. So the faces of those two boys in the image in the painting sort of reminded me of that. But then yet underneath the way that I executed it, I wanted to show the humanistic side of a kid, you know, of drawing and just wanting to be, and then also wanting to be accepted. And so underneath, I wanted to be accepted, you know, in the Boy Scouts, and I just never was. So when you see the color underneath the image of the Boy Scouts, the two Boy Scouts in that painting, there's an array of different colors, and so that's how I kind of see us as humans and my happy space.
And
Mhm.
it's ironic that some organization that's supposed to promote unity
Right.
does the
Right.
exact opposite.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
um,
So.
I, I think what draws me to it is just those layers, um,
Mhm.
because it it almost disappears if you get too far away from it and you can't
Exactly.
see the detail. And what you were saying about seeing something new every time. And I had the
Mhm.
student who asked, "Is that Biggie and Tupac?" And I thought, I don't think so, but I had never thought about it
Mm,
before, and it,
yeah. Yeah.
made me wonder. So
But going back to those layers, I mean, the emotional layers, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to imply is that the farther you go back, you kind of miss the details. And those details were what I felt I wanted, you know, the kids and the instructors to kind of see like, hey, I don't really feel welcomed here. But you know, so yeah.
did they did they ever come to realize that?
No. No. There's just I think my mom, her focus was more exposing me to different environments and for me to get out of the normal environment of how I saw um let's just black kids interact or my cousins interact. She just was more about the exposure and that was kind of like my first time being amongst like white people that were my age, and I'm like, I don't really, you know, because I went to an all black elementary school growing up, so I was just kind of like, why am I here? Like, and then I'm like building race cars and learning how to tie stupid knots and like and I'm being laughed at and I'm just you know what I mean like or snickered at and, you know just like all these different things. It's just like anyway, but um it actually built some resilience in me. It made me a little tougher it kind of gave me my first glimpse of like how the world can be,
Yeah,
and
I
and
mean,
whether they realize it or not, it was just it's just what it is.
and I think that's something I see in your work generally,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not about comfort. It's
Mm-mm. No.
the the seascapes, which are beautiful and technically brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I look at them and think these are amazing, but I'm not drawn
Mm-hmm.
to having them on my wall,
Right. Right.
even though they would provide a lot more comfort.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Boy
Yeah.
Scouts and it
That's
puzzles me,
why.
and I keep looking, and then I hear the story behind it, and it makes me uncomfortable, and it makes
Mhm.
me like it even more.
Yep. That's what good art does. That's exactly what good art does. I just believe that because it's like a movie. We were and this might be a side note, but like just me watching American Fiction was like, wait a minute. But it was so good though, because you weren't expecting these things in the movie. But um I just really believe that, when you do the research, when you investigate, when you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations and then you ask questions from a different point of view, you can really get those dialogues that you're experiencing from the works. And that's what I think. That's why art is needed, and that's why art should be collected. Yeah,
and and shared, because
and shared.
I think that's the thing for me, that partly it's selfish, because if I didn't have my office crammed full, I wouldn't get to see a lot of these pieces. But it's also, I love it when a
Mm,
student actually asks a question or notices a piece, or that picture I showed you of the basketball player who had fallen asleep underneath
oh yeah,
Watts Ryder, and I had been
yeah.
hesitant about having it on the wall, and here he is snoring his head off underneath, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you've put me in my place in terms of
Right,
comfort
right,
and
right.
what's going to bother someone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
someday we'll know.
Someday we'll know. That came from a song from the Radicals. It's a group, it's a band in Europe. And it's the movie, oh, this was years ago. I watched the movie Surf's Up, which was like an animation movie, but it's about this penguin chasing his dream and to become a surfer. And his friend was a chicken. So anyway, but they both wanted to be surfers. So anyway, at the end of the movie, um, I literally cried because it was such a great movie about pursuing your dreams. But the way that they did the movie, and this is an animation movie, like not an anime, but an animation movie. Yeah. So the way that they did it was as if like, how like MTV Real World would, how basically the people are talking to the camera and as if like the viewer, like you watching it, like you're having a conversation with them. So it was very well done. So they did it in that style. And the song, I tear up every time, but the song is from the Radicals, and the song is called "You Give What You Give." Like you have to give what you give, yeah, or something like that. But it's about basically putting in your hard work, and success will come. And I tear up because it always puts me back to literally me dreaming about being an artist. And when I say I've given my blood, sweat, and tears to this, I have. I mean, there were times where I sacrificed eating. There were times where I didn't have a place to stay and I was on the couch. There were times where I spent a whole summer in my studio sleeping on the concrete floor. Um, I just Nothing in life mattered except me staying in front of the painting because I really felt my authentic self, right? But anyway, I fast forward to when I made Someday We'll Know. My father is not well, so he spent 40 years in the military. So I was thinking about him and just the idea of fighting for the country and, you know, soldiers coming back from the Vietnam War and not getting the support and help and the recognition. And I started thinking about war just in general, war from a fighting standpoint of like from internal fighting of like emotions, as well as an idea of thinking that you should get one thing, but then being disappointed not. And when I start paintings, I write. I actually don't even sketch. I write. And so it's kind of like I write, it's like a journal. I write my feelings out or write questions out. I write feelings out. And then I have questions to those um, feelings. And then I imagine, like, I think about, okay, well, what sort of imagery do I look for? Do I want to show? And then I go into the history books and find them. Or I go visit museums and like ask to go see their archives of, images, or I go online and just surf for, imagery. So that's how I find my images. And then I use those to paint from. But this is a soldier from the Vietnam War, just looking out into the open, and just that facial expression of him feeling defeated, but then yet still questioning. And but I just wanted to capture that emotion.
Okay.
That was it.
There is, in addition to the date, there's something written across, and I cannot for the life of me make it out, and that keeps bugging me because I don't know.
Oh, I think it's Someday You'll Know.
Okay, because
Someday we'll
I
know.
can make out the day. I guess it's just I've not.
Yeah, I think it's Someday We'll Know.
Okay.
But I'm channeling my Cy Twombly there. Because there were things that he was doing on his works, and I'm like, I can't make this out. And I'm just like, okay, that's the artistry in it. That's the, that's the ambiguity of it. So
Well, I mean, I love the fact that like you say, you can't leave it alone. You keep coming back to it.
you keep coming back. You keep coming back. So
And so,
yeah. But yeah, that's that piece. And so yeah.
okay. Well, probably have time for one more.
One more?
One more
Okay.
of your pieces.
All right.
And for me, it's going to be Robert Smalls.
Robert Smalls. He is
whom I have told you before. I have a great fondness for him across
me too.
across
He's
the
a
years,
super,
and
he's
I'm really fascinated by you're doing this on Mylar, because I don't think of Mylar as something that you could actually make a mark on.
Yeah, no, it isn't really. Yeah, it really isn't. But my mother, um, my father bought my mom a convenience store, because when my dad was like, my mom was like, I want something to do. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so And I was like, well, and I don't know where he got the money and all that stuff, but next thing you know, we owned a small wooden like convenience store, and so we would get cheese and meats to sell, and they would come in this mylar wrapping paper, kind of like butcher paper and meat cutting paper. And I just remember just seeing that all the time. And so um, I started, it was right when the Marvel superheroes, like their movies, the Avengers came out. And then I started thinking about like superheroes, like Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man is a teen, and it's like for him to join the cause to fight, villains to save Earth. I was just thinking historically, like who were our superheroes, like our young superheroes. And when I started digging and doing research, I came across Robert Smalls because Robert Smalls was pretty badass. I mean, for him to be able to like study, when ships come in and out, study, the mechanics of how the captain, that was on his ship, like his movements and his, his whereabouts, like all of that like that was such a strategic and calculated uh, thing that he was able to do, and it got him and others to freedom. And this was in Beaufort, South Carolina. So he was very significant in that. But just I started thinking, like, because of his wit and his intelligence, I started thinking about like, okay, like superhero wise, like who has that? And like for me, it was like Spider Man. Like Spider Man was, even though Peter Parker, still a teen, but he got bitten by a spider. I just thinking like, well, maybe Robert Smalls got bitten by the idea of freedom. Like, what does freedom look like? So, and I'm pretty sure others were too, but it was just like he took it a step further. Like, and Spider-Man as a teen was fearless, you know. Um, the same thing with Robert Smalls. I'm talking about fearless. So those were the associations that I was making when it came to who were our young superheroes, like our young historic superheroes. And there's several others, but because I'm from South Carolina, born and raised, um, I wanted to start with my state first. And so that's why I decided to do Robert Smalls. And I wanted to do Mylar because of, again, when I create work, the beautiful thing that I always want to do is make sure that it's authentic. That's why a lot of my work doesn't look like the same and that it doesn't look like anyone else because I'm always coming from a place of authenticity. Like this is something I experienced. And I'm also wanting to make sure that I fuse it with letting the content drive the aesthetics of the work. So at first, the first layer is like, okay, an authentic place, something that I've literally have experienced, whether that's physical, whether that's emotional. And then how can I translate that in the material that I'm using to make the work, right? And then from that, okay, let me do the research and think, well, what would be the best way to share this, to show this? Um, and I thought, because Mylar, when you think about the physicality of it, the properties of it, it's translucent. You can see through it. Like when you hold it up to a light, it shines through. The other thing is like Mylar is very slick. So when you put paint on it, it runs off. So when I did the Robert Small piece and paint on Mylar, I've got a blow dryer in my left hand and I've got paint on a paintbrush in my right. So I'm constantly like making sure that like I'm engaging myself in the mental, physical process that I think Robert Small would have had to do to be able to escape. Like, because that's not easy. So then I'm putting myself in that uncomfortable position of like, okay, can I literally paint with a paintbrush? Because that ain't easy, right? So therefore, you get a fresh um, aesthetics with the works. And that's how I created Robert Small. So yeah,
Well, you get not just the fresh aesthetic, but something kind of intangible as well
exactly,
with
exactly.
like imbuing it with that spirit.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I will reverse what I was saying earlier about comfort in your work because
Yeah.
I think in this case
Yeah.
that's what we look for in heroes is a sense of
Hmm.
comfort. And
Yeah.
also, if you had those fond memories of the butcher
Hmm.
paper mylar wrappings,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not just the what they represented, say in wrapping meat or cheese,
Hmm.
but in terms
Hmm.
of family,
Oh
that
yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
great deal of comfort there. And
Yeah.
something I read just recently, Anthony
Hmm.
Mackie saying that his grandfather had to pick cotton and now he's a Captain America. So
Nice.
the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
image of hero is
Yeah.
expanding tremendously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I also would say that that's what um, Stephen Corzo, what he's doing in his work. Um, he's showing the heroism in the portraits that he's drawing, um, but also showing the other side too of like of what each person had to go through or something that, and then also too what he experienced. So, um, yeah, yeah, he has great work. His drawings,
Well, this has been great. I've
good.
learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about the work.
Yeah.
I think people will enjoy it, enjoy hearing about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, I
And
do
I think
want
it's a
us,
great show too.
I do want us to get together one more time, and I would love to hear your take on some of these other contemporary
Okay.
artists, but would also love to talk to you about art that transcends the museum and pop culture, and whether it's a halftime show or a music
I
video
agree.
like This Is America.
I agree, which is another good one too.
So,
Well,
so
very powerful.
anyway, we'll plan for that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, we always have good conversations. It's good.
Okay. I wish we actually had a couch. That would make it a little more comfortable. So,
I know, right? Sounds good, man. Well,
all
we
right.
got next time.
Okay. Well, take
Thanks.
care.
Thank you, sir. All righty. I'll talk to you
Talk to
soon.
you soon.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.